have another revision lecture, and in that revision session, I will discuss the question paper from 2013. So today we will discuss 2014 exam paper. And I hope you, by this time, you know the structure of the question, the rubrics. It's basically divided into two sections. And in the first section, we will have the 4 topics that we have covered before the Christmas vacation. And the second term will have the other rest of the topics. Okay, and you will have to choose 3 topics, at least 1 from each section. Okay, so that's the standard rubrics. And you will have to look at the first structure even more. And still, if you have got any question, you can ask me, send me an email. Okay? Right. So today, when I go through these questions, I have dropped one question. This is from the first topic, because we have discussed that particular question in the tutorial. So the first question is already discussed in the tutorial. So therefore, we are going to discuss it here. And secondly, since I didn't complete the last topic yet, so that's why today I think it will not be fair to discuss the last topic as well. And I can discuss it later when we finish, which is in our second revision lecture. We can keep the last topic as well. Right. So then we start with the second topic, which is agriculture and industrialization. And this the question is about the Lewis model. Okay, it says that it critically examine the dual economy model to explain the structural change typically observed in the developing countries. So basically, you have to discuss the economic transformation. So it is not sufficient just to give the structure of the model, but it is more important that how the economy transform and what are the problems a country encounter or a country encountered before when the industrialization took place, or whether such transformation from agrarian economy to industrial economy really happened in some countries. Okay, so that's why you start with your answer with the Lewis model, which is very standard, whether it's Ferrero or Ray, whichever textbook you follow, you get the standard model there, which will describe the model along with some assumptions. And this is basically a labor surplus model, so sometimes it will be termed as a labor surplus model in some books, Lewis model, or economic transformation. So there are various names to this model. Okay. Now, once you have described the model, the standard model, then you have to go beyond it basically, because what is needed for transformation, and what can affect, or what are the other factors can affect the smoothness, or can affect this transformation in reality. So therefore, I mentioned here that the reinvestment of the capitalist profit in labor-saving capital equipment can affect this, okay? Because the whole idea is the migration. I mentioned it before. This particular model is heavily based on migration. And the migration means the industrial sector should have the ability to absorb these surplus labor force, the disguised unemployment. But in reality, if there are capital-intensive industrialization, then possibly that will not happen. Migration will stop, although you have got surplus workers, but they will not be employed. Okay, so there could be an investment in the capital-intensive industrialization, and also these capitalists may not reinvest their profit in the same country. They may put their money somewhere else. So the demand for the surplus labor may not come from the industrial sector, or industrialization may stop even if there is a surplus labor force. Okay. So therefore, there will be a limited absorption of the surplus labor, and also in that case, you find that, and there will be an increase in the wage rate in the urban areas. Okay? So the increase in the urban wage increases of the unemployment. So on the one hand, you have got unemployment. On the other hand, you have got high wage rate. Okay? So which is very difficult to explain theoretically, but that can happen if there is a factor of flight and if there is a investment in the capital-intensive technology and if there is a demand for the skilled workers. Okay. And also you'll find that there will be widespread the widespread non-existence of the surplus labor. So the idea here is that there is a huge amount of labor, surplus labor in agriculture, but in many countries that's not true. Okay, there may be low productivity, but that doesn't mean that there's a surplus labor everywhere. And it's not true that the agriculture can always support the industrialization process or the transformation by supplying labor. That's not also always true. Okay. So therefore, therefore all these factors will require some sort of modification to this model. Okay, all these restrictions or limitations. Now, if we look at the empirical evidence, we observe that the empirical studies on the process of transformation concluded that the pace and the pattern of development can vary due to domestic and institutional, due to domestic and international factors, right? Here, we did not talk about the labor market, the structure of the labor market at all in this model. And they did not talk, they just assume that the labor market is quite flexible, there is no rigidities, and the migration is costless, all sorts of things. But there could be some domestic factors. For example, it could be institutions, because in some countries, the labor cannot really migrate from rural to urban areas very easily. There could be institutional constraint on that. So the government may not allow, because it will create a heavy burden on the cities and so on. Or there could be, labor market will be quite rigid in that sense, because of the institutional problem. And also, there could be international factors as well. For example, if the firms have got access to the international capital market, then possibly the capitalists do not have to earn a high profit to reinvest. Okay? Because in this model, they say that the capitalists they earn profit and they reinvest their profit in the same direction. But in reality, in some countries, the capitalists can raise money from somewhere else. They can borrow money from external sources or from internal sources. So this sort of access to the external capital, the availability of the technology, and particularly the trade can play a significant role. So it is not just labor, it is not just the surplus labor, it is to what extent the country is export-oriented or to what extent it is integrated in the global world can also affect the transformation, right? Because if the country doesn't have the comparative advantage in manufactured goods, and if it has got the comparative advantage in agricultural commodity, or a competitive advantage in the agricultural commodity, then possibly you don't need transformation, because then you focus on agriculture, right? But in this particular model, there is no role for international trade. No consideration was given to the international trade. But in reality, international trade can affect the transformation. Okay? It can stop transformation, or it can even accelerate the transformation process. So even if you don't have the surplus labor, still some countries can industrialize at a faster rate if there is a demand for their manufactured products. Okay? Now, for evidence, you can read there is an article there, on the blackboard I said before as well on China. So we found that in China and also in some other countries, the agricultural output supported the growth in the industrial sector. So particularly in China, after the reform, after the 1979, the agricultural sector helped the industrialization process in China. So which is basically supporting the Lewis model. But normally we said that it is the social, commercial, and institutional conditions that will determine the speed and the success of the transformation, and also to what extent the farmers will respond to the incentive. Remember, when the surplus labor will migrate to the urban areas, there will be demand for more food items, right? So because then the smaller agricultural sector will have to support a large industrial sector. Now, then the price will go up. Now, when price goes up, we expect that the farmers will take this incentive and they will increase their production by employing better technology, commercialization, and so on. So that's at the heart of this transformation process, that the productivity increase in agriculture will be needed because there will be a smaller agricultural sector which will support the larger industrial sector. But to what extent the farmers will respond to this incentive is also unclear. I mean, the elasticity. Some people say that the farmer supply elasticity could be quite low, but some people say that no. In some countries, they respond to the incentive. When price goes up, they increase their production, they invest in technology, and so on. Okay? So it can happen. But there is a if here. Okay? So that's all about the topic 2. The topic 3 is, it's on inequality and growth. And the question is about the Kuznets hypothesis. Because the question is about the Kuznets hypothesis, therefore you can discuss everything, right? Because the Kuznets hypothesis shows the correlation between inequality and growth. So it gives you enough leeway to discuss various aspects of the relationship. You can talk about the inequality affecting growth, growth affecting inequality, the short-term growth, long-term growth, and so on. Okay? So basically, you start with the basic Kuznets invariant hypothesis. You just mentioned the hypothesis very briefly, and which shows the relationship between the per capita income and the income inequality in a cross-section countries. Okay, and they found the inverted U relationship. Okay, so it was a cross-section study, but then you can mention some limitations of the inverted U. I mentioned some of the limitations of this inverted U, the Kuznets hypothesis, in the lecture as well, so you can mention some of them. Okay. But the question is that does empirical evidence for the Kuznets hypothesis? So clearly, it is asking for the empirical evidence. It is not asking for the hypothesis itself. If you mention about the hypothesis and if you identify the limitations of the hypothesis, but then you are not answering the question really, right? Because the question is, does the empirical evidence for the Kuznets hypothesis mean that the developing countries should not aim for reduction in income inequality? Because according to the Kuznets hypothesis, if you lower the income, if you want to reduce the income inequality, then the growth also will be lower. Okay? At least during the first phase or the first half of the Kuznets curve. Okay? The first portion is positively sloped, therefore the lower inequality means lower growth. Okay? All right. Now, in terms of the empirical evidence, as I said, there are ample or quite sufficient amount of empirical evidence available on the blackboard. You can go through various articles and summarize their findings. And we found that the paper by Forbes, she found a robust and a significant relationship, significant positive relationship between income inequality and growth. So possibly the Forbes will support, or the Forbes finding will support the Kuznets hypothesis, yes. But it was only in the short run and the medium term. Okay. Yeah, but only in the short and the medium term, which means that yes, in the short and the medium term, possibly the inequality, an increase in economic growth can lead to increase in the income inequality. Okay. But when you use the time series data, or when people used the time series data, then they did not find a significant relationship. They found some relationship for some countries, but it was not a very convincing evidence that you don't get this type of the inverted U type of evidence for a large number of countries and for several years. So using the panel data by the reliable time series data, I think I meant the panel data. Okay, so those articles which use the panel data, they did not come up with a very firm conclusion in support of the Kuznets hypothesis. So that's why I said that it fails to hold. Okay, and also it was found that it's not just the contemporaneous relationship. It's not just today's inequality affecting today's growth. It could be intertemporal or the long-term relationship. So some articles